We have classes from 10:45 to 11:45 in the morning. We have several classes at Saaket. We have Hindi, we have Kannada, Swaranjali, Vadya Tarangini, and also Gita chanting and Slokathon. Okay, so that's a lot of things. So I'll explain to you what each of them does. Hindi, obvious, they learn to speak Hindi, write Hindi. Kannada, same thing, they learn the language. For Swaranjali, this is not a formal party class or anything where they learn the classical music. It's basically for kids who are got a reasonably good voice and want to sing on stage and get used to the idea of singing. They'll be taught bhajans. So they'll be in classical ragas, so they will learn some ragas in the process. But the focus is not on the classical music, but the focus is on the bhajans. So if your child is interested, enroll them. And also, I'll talk about the banquet later after this. Let me finish this. So that's Swaranjali. Then we have something very unique here in Saaket called Vadya Tarangini. This is of interest to high school students, 9th to 12th grade, perhaps 8th grade. If they are already in the band or orchestra at school, they know how to play their instruments with Western music. So Vadya Tarangini is an amazing opportunity for them to play Indian classical music on their Western instruments. If they can read sheet music, they will be given the notes in Western notation for the Indian classical compositions, and they will learn how to play them on their Western instruments, and then they will get opportunities to perform. So there are quite a few opportunities through the year, scattered through the year when they perform together, and so that's something that you might want to consider if your child is in high school band or orchestra, or 8th grade too. And so and then we have Gita chanting and Slokathon. Now Gita chanting and Slokathon, we have classes here to help them learn. For Gita chanting, they learn the chapter 4 that we are learning, we are chanting during the session. They learn to chant it correctly. So correctly meaning they understand the differences between all those aspirations, everything. They aspired consonants versus soft consonants. They learn all those things. They'll learn how to say pa instead of fa. So they learn all those nuances of Sanskrit, and then they get to chant it correctly. Okay. The benefit is that as a bonus, they can also participate in the Gita chanting competition, which is held at the end of the year, where they can show how well they have learned it. Now, it is not essential that you enroll in Gita chanting to participate in the competition, but Gita chanting class is an additional aid they get. They get a lot of special representations of the music to help them learn. So you'll be amazed at how, without knowing Sanskrit, they can pronounce Sanskritam very well. So that's what that class does. Now, if you cannot enroll in that class, don't despair. You can learn this at home too. If you are comfortable with Sanskrit and you know how to pronounce the consonants correctly, go ahead and teach them at home, okay? And they can still participate in the competition. Slokathon. So Slokathon is a very unique program where, you go to the temple and your child stands there looking all around the place, not knowing what to do. Well, Slokathon fixes that because they will learn slokas of every deity, and they will learn few slokas of every deity, so that they will be well equipped for any puja. Okay. So again, this program is very self-paced. It's a long program, 250 slokas plus some Vedic chanting. It takes a couple of years to do it. The younger students finish it very fast because they have a lot more time to memorize. The older kids take a little longer. So it's best to start when they are very young, but doesn't mean you cannot start. Now, if you don't finish the program, that doesn't mean they lose anything. It's just that they learn as much as they can and then they stop. So consider that program. Now, what we offer here is coaching for chanting the slokams correctly. Again, if you are comfortable doing that at home, feel free to teach them at home. Okay? Because we have all these classes at the same time, it is not possible to attend all of them together. So I encourage you to use your home coaching as well to supplement it. Gita chanting and Slokathon can be attended together because we allow them to split half an hour between the two classes. So those two can be split. Okay, now coming to banquet. The banquet is our annual opportunity to showcase our students. So I highly encourage you to have your kids sign up for these various presentations. Dance sign-ups is over. We already started practice for dance. But Swaranjali music sign up is tomorrow. You have to sign up by tomorrow. So get your children signed up for that. You don't have to be in the Swaranjali program, registered for the program to do this banquet program. So you can still sign up your kids. And they will have to attend practices, and once and then they get to present on the stage at the banquet. Also, we have opportunities for Vadya Tarangini. So if your child is not in the Vadya Tarangini, but you want them to participate in this banquet, they can do that. Slokathon and Gita chanting are slightly different. For Gita chanting, we usually have always presented the Gita that we learned last year at the banquet, because we won't finish this year's Gita by that time. So for that reason, only the kids who participated in the competition last year or who attended classes last year can participate in the Gita chanting segment of the banquet. For Slokathon, you have an edge to get in even now. Okay, so the way that works is Hariji has picked a particular slokam that the children have to memorize and pass out, test out before they can participate in the program. So we have 2 months, ample time for them to learn that stotram. So if they are not yet in Slokathon, go today and register them, and tell the Slokathon teacher that you are interested in participating. They'll tell you what stotram that is, and you can practice, test it out before November end, and participate in the banquet. Okay, so that's the banquet portion of Slokathon. So I have a question. How many of you here are comfortable with Devanagari? Okay, so use that to teach your children first, and maybe if you are willing, contact me later on to help teach other kids too. Okay, I would appreciate that. Any other questions? Any questions? Okay, Hari Om. For Slokathon? The banquet has specific requirements for each segment. So you have to read what it is. We sent out the email last week. If you don't have it, you can reach out to me. I'll send it to you again. Yeah, but there are specific requirements for Swaranjali and for Vadya Tarangini. There are specific requirements they have to meet. But for Slokathon and Gita chanting, just what I told you. If they participated last year, they can participate this year in Gita chanting. Slokathon, you still can edge in. Okay? Yes, you can do that. What we do is, we do the first half an hour is Gita chanting, next half an hour is Slokathon. Oh, with language, mixing it is a problem because you cannot miss any portion of the language, right? The language class, you cannot miss any portion of it. Which, the Slokathon and Gita chanting? So my recommendation is, if you're comfortable with Sanskrit, teach them at home. For Slokathon, it's very easy because the book is available in the bookstore. The audio is available on our website. So if you know Sanskrit, or if you can understand the differences in the consonants, the aspirations, then go ahead and teach it them yourself. Because we only have this 1 hour between the 2 sessions to offer classes. Unless you are all going to tell me you're going to come here on a Monday or Tuesday or something.
What you're saying is, if you will learn it at home and do the test.
Yeah, you can test. You can test once a month. The testing occurs here on site. So you can take a little time out of your Hindi class or whatever and go and do the test and come back. That you can do that.
So right, so I'll step in here. Yeah. So we have the classes here for those timings. It's hard to have it any other timing. It's only between that 1 hour. So it's a trade-off. Either the languages or the Slokathon class they'll have to take at that time. But the easy thing is that if they choose to opt for the language class, then with the audio online and with the books, then it's self-paced. It was originally meant to be a self-paced program that can be done that way also, by looking at the audio and looking at the book and learning that way. It's possible. Yeah.
Can they learn through the video that is put out the same day?
Yeah, they can. They can. So they can learn from that as well. All right, let's begin. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we ended last week by looking at Are there even people we can point to saying that this is a realized person? Because it said that they don't have desires. It said that they're beyond this limited identity that you and I have. Now, Arjuna's question is much like ours here. Point me to these people. What are they even like? For instance, if I said to you right now, we have a billionaire in the room. Tell me who it is. Instantly you look around, seeing who that person is. Now, what are the markers externally that you can point to say this person's a billionaire? How would you guess? What kind of a car they drove to get here? What car they got out of? What else would you point at? Branded clothes, what they're wearing. What else? Jewelry and what kind of accessories. How they talk to the people here could be one marker as well. Or if they're walking just like dismissive, maybe that could be one. How other people talk to them, that could be another thing as well. And shoes, who said shoes? That's one thing, they wouldn't wear nice shoes. You have to put them on the rack there, they could get stolen. So if you're a billionaire, you're not wearing your billionaire shoes, you're wearing normal shoes. That's one. There's something about the rich and famous that we can't relate to. Like one of the things apparently, I read an article recently is, you and I have phone cases on our phones, right? In case they fall, they can crack, all these things. We still manage to crack our phones when we drop them, even with the phone cases. Apparently the uber rich billionaires don't have phone cases. Phone cases are for peasants like you and me. They don't care if they crack the phone because they can get another one within an hour. They have that kind of means, so they go without the case then. So that's how you know you're rich. No phone cases. So those are markers externally that if I say who is it, by the way, no one's a billionaire here, I don't think, so excitement's gone. So those are the markers you externally look for. Now Arjuna's question to Bhagavan Krishna here is, Sthita pragnasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. Sthita pragnasya ka bhasha, this sthita prajna, this person who is integrated in the personality, how do they speak? Ka bhasha. Kimasita vrajeta kim. How do they sit? How do they walk? What are these markers I'm looking for to indicate this person is realized? I want to know. Now, in the lead up to this, what has Bhagavan Krishna said? That person must be yuktaha. Yuktaha meaning integrated, balanced personality. What does that even mean? Let's go further and see then. He says the person who is balanced, one of wisdom, is the person who prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan. Prajahati yada kaman. They've given up all desires. No trace of desire in them, of nothing personal for themselves. Anything they do work-wise, anything they do is only for the welfare of others or gratitude for this great God that made this creation, for that Bhagavan. It's not for any personal benefit. He goes further to say that it's no desires in the mind, satisfied by what? No things or objects. Atmanyev atmana tushtaha, satisfied by reveling in that own self. What that real identity is, they just revel in that. Now to you and me, these are just words. What is this even saying then? Well, still, what are those markers we're looking for? Bhagavan Krishna goes further. He says it's the one whose mind is not shaken by any kind of adversity. Dukkhesh manudvigna manaha. That whether there is sorrow or great jubilation, whether there is despair and calamity or great joy, the mind does not waver and go up and down. Now, it's like when you're on an airplane and there's turbulence. If the flight attendants are still smiling and they're calm, you stay calm. When they start freaking out, that's when you know, okay, something must be really wrong here. Why? Because by design, by profession, they're used to those situations. They're trained to handle them. So in that situation, when they're calm, we're calm as well. But the person of steady wisdom, they have to be someone that has that calmness then, in all matters of life. When I was young, in childhood, I was deathly afraid of thunderstorms. Like tornadoes, thunderstorms. If I'd see clouds in the sky, I'd start crying. It was like some kids are like that. Grew out of it eventually. But even as a teenager, if there's a big thunderstorm or heavy rain going on, I still feel a little anxious. Like there's a little anxiety going on there. Chest would tighten up a little bit. So remember, I was around 15 years old, me, my brother, and my mom watching the news. There's a big storm going on, so they cut in with the breaking news. Weatherman's up there saying there's a tornado warning and that tornado is actually going through the city. And he's saying, don't panic, it'll be fine. Just find an area that's, without any windows, next to no appliances, all of this. Now he's talking, and there's a Doppler radar behind him. Green on the outside, most of it's red, meaning the city's it's really a big storm. And all of a sudden, he's tracking the storm, and he says, it's moving on to Preston and 635, and he pauses, and he says, that's where my family lives. I have to call my family, and he ran off the screen. This really happened. The weatherman, who's supposed to keep us calm in this moment, he says, my family, and he ran off the screen. So I looked at my brother, and my thought in my mind was, okay, I lived a good 15 years. I think, Govinda, this is it now. That's what it felt like. I mean, the weatherman runs off crying. What are we supposed to do, all of us at home? So the wise one is one who gives others confidence with that calmness that they exhibit. And everywhere they go, sarvatrana visnehaha, where there is no attachment to anything. Now, attachment and love are two different things. We have to make that very clear. Because oftentimes when we say no attachment, people jump up. It's easy for you to say, Brahmachari ji, you have no family, no kids and everything. We have kids, real jobs, real things. We have to be attached to those. What are you saying? I get that. Totally understand. You're mistaking love for attachment, though. Because there's 3 layers when it comes to love. First, most basic layer of love is sneha. Sneha is what? I love you because you give me something in return. Anything I love in this world, what's the reason why? How it makes me feel. I value someone and I love them until they do something wrong to me. As long as they're benefiting me in that friendship, in that relationship, in that transaction, then I love that person. Same thing with an object. I love any object because of how it makes me feel. The love is not inherently for that object. If love was simply just for an object, it should make me feel the same way every time I use that object, shouldn't it? If love is purely for that object. So wearing a wool coat, for instance, in December time, we need to wear it here. Now, middle of July, I challenge you, wear a wool jacket and run around Saaket 3 times. After the second time, if you can survive, I'll give you a prize, but you'll drop down by then. Love is not in that object. Love is for how it makes me feel at a specific time in the way I want to feel. That's why that love is there. Same thing with the people we love, right? Not just purely intrinsically for that person, how they make me feel. That's the lowest kind of love, sneha. One level above that is prema. Where, for me, it's not I am the one who loves something and there's the thing that I love. They are one and the same. Not just sympathy for my fellow people, empathy is what I have. Empathy is what? The first 2 letters are E-M, that's me spelled backwards. Where I have that identification with the thing I love, with the person that I love. Where it's not that just because they have some benefit, that means I'm not benefiting. Anytime they have a victory, it's my victory as well. Teri jeet, meri jeet, teri haar, meri haar. That's what it is. Now, even above that, there's another type of love. Sneha, prema, one more. Where the ideal that I love is so high, I can't quantify it by how it makes me feel or any transaction. The identification is even higher. So this is sneha and this is prema. The final level is for the higher ideal, something much higher. Or when we talk about patriotism, for instance, for that divine mother of country, we don't call it desh sneha, we don't call it desh prema, we call it desh bhakti. Bhakti is that highest love then. Whether the highest ideal of a nation, whether the highest ideal of serving that Bhagavan, bhakti is that highest. Where the identification is, there is no longer this entity even that is loving. There is just that which I love. That's the highest level. So when we say attachment, get rid of it to different beings, different objects, it's getting rid of that sneha level of attachment. Rise in love, don't fall in love, rise in love to that level of bhakti. That's what it's saying here. Now, we need a framework to think about this even. At the end, the next segment then, yeah. At the end, I'll leave time for questions today, I promise. There's one more layer to look at here, where there has to be some kind of framework for us to understand what exactly is meant by go beyond for that divine. The person of steady wisdom has gone beyond any kind of attachments. What does that even mean? How do I understand it tangibly? That has to be done. Because one of Pujya Gurudev's biggest challenges in teaching this knowledge early on, I'd say one of the biggest challenges was translating this knowledge into a way we understand in English. From the very basic words, that is a huge challenge. Because the word Atma, what do we translate that to colloquially into English? Soul is what we say. Soul is an Abrahamic concept with its own baggage. If you look at the definition of Atma in Sanskritam, like in Tattva Bodha, it's 3 lines long. To cleanly translate that to a single English word is impossible. Svarga Naraka, what do we translate that to? Heaven and hell. That's not a clean translation either. Because our idea of lokas is much different from an eternal heaven and eternal damnation in hell. That is not our paradigm at all. The word Shraddha, what do we translate that to? Shraddha, homage can be a tribute. Commitment can be other thing also. Trust is Vishvasa. Faith is what we say. In the books and everything, faith is what's given as Shraddha. Now, according to the Abrahamic sense, faith is that total and complete surrender without any intellectualization is faith. Faith has to be blind in that paradigm. Shraddha is never blind though, unless it's supported by Shruti, which is Shastra, unless it's supported by Yukti, logic, unless it's supported by Anubhuti, personal experience. Unless those 3 things are there, we don't have Shraddha. Shraddha is predicated on these other 3 factors. It's purely intellectual. So English does not translate cleanly. That's one challenge Pujya Gurudev had, which through his elaborate, precise writings, he did incredible for us to drink from this great Gita. Other challenge he had was, how is there going to be a simple framework to understand this complex thinking? This is where this chart comes in right here. There's 11 elements to this BMI chart. At the very top, we have the Om. That Om indicates that highest reality, my true identity, which is beyond anything. What is that anything? At the very top, we have Vasanas, the V. In regional languages, Telugu, for instance, and others, Vasana means what? Can be translated as smell, right? What's the connection there? When you eat a meal with your hands, the right way with your hands, you wash it with soap and water, and you wash your hands like the COVID time, right? Soap and water, we vigorously until our nails fell off. We used to wash our hands like that. Even then, does your hand carry the remnant of the smell of the food for a while? It does. That's an impression that has lingered because there's been an impact. Similarly, on my own personality, as I act birth after birth after birth, my likes and dislikes and tendencies get strengthened as I act on them more and more. That creates an impression in the mind. Gentlemen, how many of you like eating at your mother-in-law's place? I'm on camera, you're not. You can not raise your hand, raise your hand. You can do it, you can blink twice so your wives won't see what you say. You like eating at your mother-in-law's place? Good, lucky, lucky. Because the son-in-law is treated really well. Especially the first son-in-law is. After that, the favorites become the other ones. So you lose that status. You guys know. But until then, you are treated really, really well at the mother-in-law's place. So then you go there. Normally at your house, you may not get achar every day, things like that. But the mother-in-law's place, you stay for a week, you get it. First day you get it. Second day, third day, you get used to it. You can ask for second helpings of that as well. Fourth day, you look at your plate. There's no achar on the plate. Ye kya bezti hai, that's what you think to yourself. But it just didn't happen. There's a disturbance in the mind. because this is not something I usually have. 3 days of having it every meal, getting used to that, expecting it, craving it. One day it's not on the plate. That leads to not anger and you're not, impaired or anything. Something's a little bit disturbed in the mind though. Now, something as basic as food for a few days, it creates an impression that leads to a little bit of an imbalance. What to talk of lifetimes upon lifetimes of strengthening tendencies again and again and again. Where we find ourselves in situations where, despite our strongest resolves, our vasanas, these impressions fight through our personality, we find ourselves in trouble. It's like a person who, they say, everywhere I go, everyone is dramatic around me. Where everyone's always fighting every part of my life. At work, it's the same way. At home, it's the same way. With my friends, it's the same way. Everyone's always fighting wherever I go. I don't like the people around me. And you look at how this person is. In every situation they're in, they're the ones saying to someone else, look, this person said this about you. That person did this about you. They're the ones spreading that disease. And then they complain saying that, oh, people are fighting around me. You're the one with the matchstick. You're the one going around lighting everything on fire. And every friend group has that one person, don't they? That one person that the only reason they exist in that friend group is for other people to say bad things about that person. To say garbage. Do you agree with me? There's always that one person. Some of you are saying yes, some of you are saying no. The ones of you saying no, you're that person that everyone else says things about. So every group has that. So these different dynamics are there. Our vasanas cannot help but express. In college, I minored in theater arts. I needed something just for fun that I could, just have fun with it. Took some classes, ended up minoring in it. So I love this dramatic acting and all of that. So at Sandipani Sadhanalaya, during the Brahmachari training course, it's tradition that after the end of the first year of the course, the students put on some kind of performance, like a 1-hour play based on what they've learned and everything. So at that time, my health wasn't that great. I wanted to study and focus. I didn't want to take part in any of this. The Vasana was there, but I said, I'm not going to take part in it. I'm going to be a good student, focus on the learning, and other people can take care of the skit and the stuff like that. But then one brahmachari said, dude, you seem to be good at this stuff. You've done it before. I'm not asking you to get involved. I'll respect your wishes. Come for the initial meeting and just give us a few ideas in that initial meeting. A few ideas, and you can go on your way. We won't ask you again. I said, okay, that's fine. So the first half-an-hour meeting, I gave some ideas. Next week, they said, look, I said, one meeting, but can you come and help write part of the script? Just part. There's 8 of us writing the script. You know some English a little bit, so come and just help us write the script a little bit. I said, okay, so I went. 1 hour that day. Helped write part of the script. I won't bore you. Long story short, 2 months later, we performed the play. I was the lead actor and the main director of the play. Vasanas have to express. As much as we don't want them to, it happens. Now, is it my lack of self-control keeping that resolve? Yeah, sure, go that route if you want to. But impressions, they do have to come out then. That's how our personalities are. Where if someone has a leadership kind of mentality, leadership type of mentality, they cannot let go of that. They can't be followers in a setting then. And that really cripples them at certain times. It's like when a parent is in a high position at work, where they're VPs or director levels, wherever they work, or they're in the military, and they're like, colonel, lieutenant, those kind of levels. People will do everything at their beck and call at the workplace. Salutes and salams and yes sirs and yes ma'ams, and then you want the report. People will spend all night at the office working on it to give it to you the next morning, only for you to glance at it and put it away. They'll work that hard for you. Now, when you go home, is your teenage son going to respect you the same way? Isn't it illogical to think so? And I have this position and everything, I'm going to be this way. It's like that employee that asked his boss. He said, sir, at home, the workplace, you're like a tiger. Simha, you're like a lion at work. I bet you're the same way at home too. He says, yeah, I am. My wife is Durga Devi though, that's the difference. So, people have to understand that just because in one position at a certain place I have this kind of a status, that does not carry over everywhere. The vasana exists to be listened to and to be respected. Other people don't recognize that though. That's where the conflict arises then. So So yuktaha, as Bhagavan points out, that person who is integrated then is one who understands vasanas are the ones that lead my personality, but what's underlying that personality is not me, it's the equipment that I use. The next layer that we find, the BMI, body, mind, intellect, these are the equipment that I use. Objection, my lord. How can you say it's equipment? It's me. In the mind, I feel hungry, I feel sad, I feel angry. The body, it's me who is going through sickness. I had the flu last week. It's my body undergoing that. Intellect, I am the one who understands, I'm the one who doesn't understand. How can you call it equipment when it's me going through these things? Because in my mind, equipment means what? My computer, my book, my phone, my bottle. These are equipments. Are you saying that this body, mind, and intellect are just like a computer in a book? Yes, it's true. Because we can tell by the way we speak, can't we? My body is in pain. My arm hurts. My face is ugly. These are different comments we make. That means it's something I possess, just like my computer. My mind is not calm. My mind is relaxed. Again, ownership, it's equipment. My intellect understands, my intellect does not understand. My ideas are accepted, my ideas are rejected. At the intellect level again, it's equipment. When I identify with a certain equipment, I get a title based on my identification there. If I'm holding a tennis racket, I'm a tennis player. If I'm holding a violin, I'm a musician. If I'm holding a gun, I could be an officer, I could be a burglar, I could be a terrorist, I could be anything else. These titles come to me based on my association with my equipment. Therefore, when I'm associated with the body, I am a perceiver. What do I perceive? Objects in this world. Everything outside of me, these are the objects that I perceive. When I'm identified with the equipment of the mind, I'm a feeler. What do I feel? Emotions. Mind is the seat of emotions. Emotions is the oscillations that I feel, those changes I go through. When I am identified with the equipment of the intellect, I am a thinker functioning in the realm of thoughts. How would you define the word thought? Just an easy, don't look at a dictionary, just easy. An idea. The Shastra definition of a thought is a really interesting one, the way Gurudev puts it. A thought is a disturbance in the mind, is a thought. Imagine a nice placid river. Like at Archinmaya Mangalam, there's the lake area there, so a nice placid, calm lake. In the morning at sunrise, the lake looks like a mirror, like a sheet of paper. You can see the trees, the rising sun. The reflection in that lake is so beautiful. I don't know, the fish are still sleeping down there or what. I don't know what it is, but it looks so smooth. In that smooth, sheet-like lake, you throw one pebble inside there. See the ripple effect that happens? That's what a thought is. The word disturbance we take in a negative way. Disturbance is a neutral word. Disturbance is when there's any kind of modification to an existing structure, that can be called a disturbance. So anytime this mind, this inner instrument that is placid and calm, whenever there's a ripple in there, that is because of a thought. The mind takes the shape of whatever thought occupies it. So the intellect thinks thoughts. Oh, okay, this framework sounds good to look at. How does it help me then? From now on, when we look at our study of Vedanta and specifically Bhagavad Gita here, there are so many connections we can make, understanding our own vasanas and personalities based on this framework presented by Puji Gurudev here. Where there's a pain point of, okay, my vasanas are affecting me, in which way? Am I at the level where the objects of the world are making my mind go awry? Is that the reason why? Perception is the problem there, therefore it's at the body level. Is it that I'm perceiving things the right way, I'm seeing the right reality here, yet emotionally I don't have the strength or emotional intelligence to understand situations. As a feeler, my emotions are out of place. Or is it that when it comes to decision making, that seems to be faulty, even though body, mind are optimal, that is when the intellect has taken a hit. So like that, we can pinpoint where does the problem lie in my personality, how do I improve? Very clearly seen. Now, when it comes to restraining the senses then, there's a beautiful example that Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives in this chapter near the end, where he says it's like being carried away by a boat is what our lack of intellectual power is. Our lack of discretion making the right decision with regards to sense control, it's like being in a boat. Where there's a certain point in sadhana where we start to feel, I'm a really good person. You know, everyone else shouts at each other and everything. I'm always really calm. I only curse at people in my head. I don't really say anything out loud. I'm much better than others. You know, everyone else feels so stressed all the time. You can see it on their face. I dye my hair black and no one can see the stress that I go through, but mostly I'm calm. I don't go through anything much. I'm really good with my time and everything. You know, when I speak, so many people come and listen to me speak. Half of them even stay awake the entire time. I must be a really great person. These feelings can come up for someone. Very easy to come up. It's at that moment, Bhagavan says, that we falter when these kind of thoughts come up. What's the example he gives? If you're on a boat out in the water, if you're not paddling in the right direction, before you know it, you're way off course of where you have to be. Because if your marker is a few miles away, there's some kind of lighthouse or something, even if you go off a few hundred yards, the lighthouse will still remain in the same place from your perspective. You'll think you're on the right track. You look around you, though, you're way off track. When we were in the Boy Scouts, we'd take these canoe trips across lakes and rivers. One of my most memorable experiences in my life was canoeing the boundary waters from Montana to Canada and back. It was an 8-day trip that we took. So amazing experience. So they were very clear with us. If the current is strong, don't power paddle and go as fast as you can. Take it at a leisurely pace so you have your energy. If you expend all your energy at first, when you get tired, you'll be stuck out in the middle of that lake. The current's going one way. You can't fight against it at that point. You have to take it slow. Now, some of us listened. We had some younger kids with us, of course, 14-year-old kids who are strong football players. They don't listen. They paddled as hard as they could. And they went out faster than us, and they're laughing at us. You're so slow, this. I said, okay, I'm slow. Yes, I'm slow. They went all the way out there. And then they get out there, and they can't paddle anymore. Their arms are hurting and everything. They're only halfway there. So they stop. And they say, we're going to take a break now. Break means what? Middle of the lake is here. They went all the way to the side. It took them 1 hour extra than everyone else to get back to the other side of the lake. Slow and steady, and our boat went right. They missed it. Meaning, when it comes to sense control, the moment I feel I have it, the moment I get complacent and I take a break and I stop, what happens there? These next two shlokas are the two most famous shlokas when it comes to the fall of man. This is actually studied in our 5th grade syllabus here. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. Dhyayate vishayan pumsaha. Dhyayataha, dhyana, meditation. So ruminating on vishayan, objects of the world. Who does that? Pumsaha. Now, pumsaha is not you and me, normal people. In this instance, pumsaha is that person who has practiced self-control diligently for years, has cultivated a good amount of self-control. That's a subject in question here, someone who has that self-control. Dhyayataha vishayan. Ruminating on these objects, what does even that person go through? Attachment arises, sangaha. That attachment turns to desire, kama. I must have that thing that I'm attached to. From that desire comes anger, krodha. Not getting it, not getting enough of it, not getting it when I want it leads to anger. That's the anger. Moha is what comes next, delusion. My idea of reality goes out the window. From delusion, smriti vibhramaha. Loss of memory. Memory of what? Memory of all that I've learned about right and wrong, morality, immorality, ethics, unethical behavior, all of that is tossed out as well. I lose myself completely. From there, buddhinashaha. Buddhinasha, loss of discretion completely. Viveka is completely gone, leading finally to pranashyati, perishing. Now, this doesn't mean the body drops just because the intellect is not good, but might as well be that way, right? For someone who cannot make a single decision properly, who is carried away by emotions, does not perceive the world properly at all, we would say they are as good as dead at that point. Because there is no evolution from that state. That's what happens not just to ordinary people like you and me. Pumsaha, the ones who have practiced this for so long, even they're susceptible to it. What to talk of you and me then? Sense control is where it starts. So in this chapter here, I didn't go too much into each of the shlokas in chapter 2. The reason being, the elaboration of this chapter is the entire Bhagavad Gita. We saw topics of vasana purgation and how tendencies take us over. We'll see that in chapters 16, 17, 18. We look at Karma Yoga here. Karmarnyevadhikaraste, that set of shlokas right there. Chapter 3 is all about Karma Yoga. The glory of this knowledge. Ashcharyavat, we saw that also. That comes in chapter 4, glory of this knowledge. Tyaga, giving up on my desires for something higher. Karma Sannyasa is chapter 5. We talked about last week, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi. That mentality of single-pointed focus. Chapter 6 on Dhyana Yoga goes deeper into that. So you see, chapter 2 is like a table of contents for everything that is to come. This is a simple primer before we jump in there. And this framework that we have here is going to guide us as we take that journey. Bhushanji, your question. For which, child to mom or mom to child? Both. From a child to a mom, it is going to be that prema. It can be sneha even sometimes at first, but that prema is because I'm identified with that person. It's not the highest ideal, but still that person makes me happy. I'm identified with that person, so that's still prema at that point. From a mother to a child, though, still we can call it prema, but if it's with that attitude of the divine has given me this opportunity and this is my duty here, it's not that, okay, the kid yells at me so I'm going to stop loving him. That's not how it is. That's the highest form of prema. Bhakti can also be there then. Whereas a duty, this is something much higher than anything else. That's bhakti at that point. When it comes to which framework here? But that won't cleanly correlate, those three levels, simply because when it comes to thoughts, if we were to say that's bhakti the highest, though, thoughts can still be of a tamasic nature. The best correlation to this would be sattvic, rajasic, tamasic would be the way it is. For each of these, thoughts would have those three, emotions would have those three, objects would have those three like that. We'll get into that later in Gita. So the sneha prema bhakti, for a different example, that wouldn't cleanly correlate with this framework, yeah. Any other questions? We have a few minutes. Yes?
So for chapter 4,
Mm-hmm.
when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, whenever there's a leaning of unrighteousness and a need for righteousness, Bhagavan forms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, that implies like a trigger or a threshold at which that happens. I don't know whether that's the right interpretation, but I'm curious, could you elaborate on?
So two parts to that. First part being that people say, okay, if dharma is eternal, sanatana dharma, when is dharma ever in trouble then for Bhagavan to even come down? What's meant by that is the people who are practicing dharma, when they're being persecuted, that's when Bhagavan comes down. Whether that be Prahladaji, Dhruva Bhagavan, all these different figures, when they have been persecuted, they're practicing dharma, that's when Bhagavan comes down. The other part of, is there like a saturation point where this is okay, this is how many things have happened, I have to come down at this point. What Shastra says is, based on that yuga, when it gets to that point where Bhagavan decides I must come down, then it happens. Whether it was Ravana who was wreaking havoc, at that time Bharatavarsha was the world, wreaking havoc around the world, he had to come down. Whether it's the world sinking, entire earth sinking, he had to come as that avatara then to lift it out of the bore. When it comes to this Kali Yuga then, it's said that we are still in the good times of Kali Yuga. I know that's hard to believe given the last few years and everything that's gone on. We're still in the good portion. That Kalki Avatara comes much later on, but there's no threshold as such. It's just what Shastra says as when that Bhagavan decides that, okay, enough of these people practicing dharma being persecuted, let me come down and make things righteous again. Any other questions? Yeah.
I got one more on vasanas, right? Maybe I've been reading too much about like precision medicine where everyone is vasana. I'm curious, it seems like, is there like a precision medicine where you do sort of gap analysis and say, these are my vasanas and therefore this needs to be path, or is it more of, regardless of your vasanas, it's the same guidance?
We each have a path called Swadharma, individual dharma. There's different parts that go into that Swadharma though. Part of it is, what is my dharma based on varna and ashrama, based on the coordinates that I am born into, plus where I found myself, what is my trajectory based on that? The other is, what are my interests? So vasanas plays in there. What are my tendencies? What is it I must exhaust? What is the field that I'm given to exhaust those tendencies then? Right? That has to be understood as well. Other is, what does the world need? It seems like an ikigai thing, but it's not purely that. Because where we go deeper in this is, our idea normally of doing what we want to do and growing is, wherever I have a talent, let me go in there and express. Swadharma is different for one reason. If I only express where I have a certain talent, how am I cleansing those negative vasanas I have? There has to be some opportunity to cleanse those negative vasanas. For example, if I'm a judgmental person, someone that judges others very harshly, does not get along well with others. If my choosing is to be alone and isolated from people, I'm never going to grow out of that vasana. Only if I'm in contact with others, then do I grow. Which is why this concept of varna is so important and so often misunderstood. If you look at the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna says, I've created these 4 varnas based on guna and karma, is what he says. So many people cherry pick that. They say guna and karma is what matters for varna, doesn't matter what janma is at all. That's a common statement that's made. But if you look at the law of karma, nothing is an accident. I'm born into certain situations to exhaust vasanas, therefore janma has a reason for it as well. That has to be factored in. If you look at certain families, they have children, and whether they get training in it or not, a certain business family, the child will have a precocious tendency towards business. It just exists. And they're able to really display that at a young age, and they take that family lineage forward in that way. So I know we say nepotism, all these things, yeah, that's true to an extent. At the same time though, one part of Swadharma is using the environment and surroundings I'm born into, leveraging that to cleanse these vasanas. That's also a part of it. So as far as a gap analysis or a traditional framework like that, I've looked for it. I can't find one that purely connects to our Vedantic framework here. Nothing like that that's as clean as what we have here. Yeah. The first mistake we make is even calling it good vasana or bad vasana. Because if you have an object, for instance, a knife, is it a good or bad thing, a knife? You would say depends. If it's in the hands of a surgeon performing a surgery, it's a good thing. If it's in the hand of a guy that's trying to rob me, it's a bad thing. That's where I go with it. Vasanas are the same way in that, say I have a very outgoing leadership type of personality. Being in a position to guide others, that vasana is a good thing. Being in a place where I must surrender to a guru, that place I show leadership and say, Guru, you're wrong for this reason, we have to do this. That's not the right place for it. The surrender has to be there. So vasanas, expressing in the right place is where I see it as positive. At the end of the day, though, we say gunas are there, sattva, rajas, tamas. We never say that sattva is something to aspire to and stay there. One of Gurudev's name is Gunatitaya Namah. Guna atita, going beyond the gunas, even sattva has to be surmounted. Because even sattva can have that ahankara of, I am so pure, I am so knowledgeable, I am so calm, I am so this. Even that, as a good vasana so-called, is negative at the end of the day. Even that must be surmounted then. So it's not good or bad, it's how is it used at the end of the day to get to that highest understanding of what my reality is, the Om up there. All vasanas must be overcome. Yes? Mm-hmm. So avidya is that ignorance. Avidya is what keeps me having these vasanas. Avidya and vasanas are linked indelibly. Born of that vasana is desire. Kama comes because I have these vasanas. Because I have these impressions, desires percolate in that intellect and then flow downward from there. That's how it is. So that's our final question. I have to visit one of the classes and I'll go there. So thank you so much for joining us. Give to the blood drive if you're able to. I think it ended at 1 o'clock actually. Anyone give blood today? Anyone? Nice. Have a cookie. Don't faint, please. I was going to do it, but I haven't eaten since morning, so it looks really bad if I pass out my own lecture. You guys can do it, it's fine. If I do it, I'll try not like that. Okay, so we'll close for today. See you all next week. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.